Next, let us discuss the role of complex analysis while studying this spectral theory for the linear operators. How we can simplify and use the results of this complex analysis in spectral theory. So, the major components of this complex analysis which are used in the current form, they are the line integrals which are available whenever your domain is the complex numbers, and that of power series. So here, for studying the spectral theory, we shall focus on power series, and let's see how this concept of power series from complex analysis combines and make use in the spectral theory. So for that, we already studied about this theorem which gives us a series representation for the resolvent vector. So let's revise it quickly. It says that for every lambda naught belonging to rho of T, so we say for every element, every complex number which is present in the resolvent set R lambda T, right, for the operator R lambda T, which is the resolvent operator of the operator T, which is a bounded linear operator defined on the complex Banach space X, that has a power series representation given by equation 1. This we already know, and this representation converges absolutely for every value of lambda which lies in this disk. So what is this disk eventually? This disk is centered at lambda naught, which was your regular value, and here we take the radius to be r, where what is r? R is 1 divided by the norm of operator r lambda naught, the resolvent operator. So what is this norm quantity? This is also a number. So basically your radius is going to be a number. So we say this thing is true for all the lambdas which belong to this resolvent set whenever we may write the resolvent operator in this series expansion, where this series converges absolutely for every lambda which lie in this disk and even on the boundary of this disk. Why? Because here you see we have a less than equal to sign. So for this equal to sign is for the elements which lie on the boundary. So here you see the relation between complex analysis and that of spectral theory. So now, in order to combine these notations and concepts more precisely, let's have a view at some of the more basic concepts which relate to the present analysis. So we say a metric space, right? What is a metric space? A vector space where a metric is associated with it, and you can define corresponding to a norm, you can define a metric on a vector space. So corresponding to this metric space, we call that metric space to be connected if it is not the union of two disjoint non-empty open subsets. So a metric space that is said to be connected whenever you cannot write this to be the union of two disjoint non-empty open sets, right? So this is the definition. And what is the open set? If you remember, if you take any set, right, and for this set, for every point within this set, you can draw a very small disk having a very small radius which we call as epsilon. So this disk represents the neighborhood of that particular point, and this disk should lie within the given set. So can you say the boundary points here, this one, also lie in the open set? The answer is no. Why? Because for a point here on the boundary, you can have an absolute neighborhood which does not completely lie into the given set, having a small radius epsilon. However small you take the radius, still you have some elements which are outside this set, right? So boundary points are not counted into this. So we say an open set is a set consisting of all the points such that for every point there exists some epsilon neighborhood of that point which completely lie into the set. So this is the definition for open set. And then connected set, that means suppose this is your set. Now for any two elements here, you may join them by a line which completely lie in this. So that is the definition for connected set, right? For each pair of points, they could be joined by broken line segments lying completely in G. So this set G would now be connected. Let's see another example where it is not connected. Suppose your region or domain is this one. So here, if you take one point here, you cannot join by two line segments which completely lie into this. You have to go outside of this set. So this is not connected, right? So for this definition here, we are now ready to define the domain of domain G in the complex plane. So what is domain G? It is the open connected subset G of C, right? So this is the definition for domain of C. Moving further, next we define what are analytic functions. So which is also known as holomorphic function. So here we shall only be using the term holomorphic and not analytic. However, the meaning is same. So here we say a complex valued function h of a complex variable lambda that is said to be holomorphic on a domain G of a complex lambda plane if this h is defined and differentiable on G using the following relation. For one thing, this h should be defined on that domain. Another thing, it should be differentiable on that domain. So this is the definition for derivative that we all know. This should exist for every lambda present in the domain, right? Now this is for the function h which is defined for a complex variable lambda. Now what if we define the same for every element on G? There is also another definition in terms of series representation where we may say that the given function h is holomorphic. So let's see what's the definition. It says that h is holomorphic on G if and only if at every point of this domain G it has a power series representation. So you see how powerful this definition is. So it has a power series representation h of lambda, which is the summation of lambda minus lambda naught raised to power j multiplied by cj's, where the radius of convergence of this power series is non-zero. So that means we may relate this definition with our previous definition. So you see this definition says h of lambda could be written as this infinite series of cj lambda minus lambda naught raised to power j, where what are these cj's? These cj's are, if you look at equation number 1, so your cj's are basically this thing, right, according to the definition. So let's go back. So your cj's are f of r lambda naught t raised to power j plus 1x, where what is this f? F is the function which belong to the dual space of x, right? So with these properties, let's now define a result which defines the holomorphy on r lambda. So how do we define this operator to be differentiable or holomorphic? That is the thing. So the definition here says that for a bounded linear operator defined as T, which is defined on a complex Banach space X, right? So the resolvent corresponding to this operator, so you have T, right, corresponding to this T you have T lambda, which is nothing but T minus lambda I. Corresponding to this T lambda, you have T lambda inverse, which is R lambda, right, which is the inverse or the resolvent operator. So for this resolvent operator, we say This operator is holomorphic at every point lambda naught of the resolvent set rho of t. So that means we say the resolvent of a bounded linear operator on a complex Banach space is holomorphic at every point lambda naught of the resolvent set. If that is so, your resolvent R lambda t is holomorphic. And because it is defined and differentiable at every point of the domain, now what is your domain? It is the resolvent set. So therefore it is also locally holomorphic, right? So this is the definition. Next we have a theorem for the resolvent. Now let's see what this theorem says. It says whenever T is a bounded linear operator defined on a complex Banach space, then if you take a complex number from the resolvent set rho of T, so this lambda, which is a regular value, for this lambda we may have the norm of R lambda, which is the resolvent operator, greater than equal to 1 by delta of lambda, where what is this delta of lambda? This is the distance between this lambda and the elements of the spectrum set, right? So this delta of lambda represents the distance of lambda to the spectrum set. So according to this distance, we define the norm of the resolvent operator R lambda here. And moreover, you see, if you make this distance very small, that it should tend to infinity. If we say delta of lambda tends to infinity, then 1 by delta of lambda would tends to infinity. If this thing tends to 0, this thing will tend to infinity, and this thing, the norm of R lambda, would be greater than infinity if this thing happens. So this is the theorem. Now in order to prove this result over here, let's proceed by defining lambda naught from the resolvent set such that this lambda naught belongs to the disk lambda minus lambda naught less than equal to 1 by norm of R lambda naught. So what is this disk? Centered at lambda naught, having a radius of 1 divided by norm of R lambda naught, right? So this is the result. So what we are saying? We are saying for every lambda naught that lies in this disk, we say that is an element of the resolvent set. So here we assume that the spectrum of the operator T is non-empty. This is our assumption, and in fact we shall prove this result also. So we are assuming this sigma of T is non-empty. So if this is non-empty, then we may define this distance, because there would at least be one element which would be present in the spectrum set, so that we may measure the distance of this lambda naught from the spectrum set, and this distance is defined by this delta of lambda naught. So we say the distance from lambda naught to the spectrum must at least be equal to the radius of the disk. Why? Now look at this carefully. We say all the lambda naughts, they belong to the resolvent set. Therefore, all the lambda naught belong to this disk, and this disk is a subset of the resolvent set. And you know the resolvent set together with the spectrum set, they are disjoint with each other, and furthermore they make up the complete complex plane. So that means they are complement of each other. So if this is the subset of the resolvent set, so we may say whatever is outside here, that is all the spectrum set. So whatever lambda you take here within this disk, so the distance would at least be the radius of this disk. Why? Because there could be elements which are also of this resolvent set which are also present outside this disk. So we may say the distance must at least be equal to the radius of this disk, right? So according to that, your delta of lambda naught should be greater than equal to 1 by norm of r lambda naught. Why this is so? Because we are saying the distance must at least be equal to this. So that means it could either be equal to this radius or it could be greater than this radius, right? So rearranging this, shifting this here and this here, we may have the norm of r lambda naught greater than equal to 1 by delta of lambda naught for every lambda naught which is present in this disk of the resolvent set, right? So this is what we wanted to prove here, that norm of r lambda is greater than equal to 1 by delta lambda. Now we have proved a result for a single lambda naught, right? So this thing is true in general because our lambda naught that we have considered was an arbitrary number, and the next result follows immediately from this result, that is whenever you take this delta of lambda approaching 0, you have the norm of r lambda approaching infinity.